All right, we are live on YouTube and Twitter, and I just need to click the button over here on Instagram. There we go.
Oh, live everywhere.
Everywhere. Hello, 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 my friends. Thank you for joining me. I'm Nicholas W. Fuller, and this is Person Behind the Pages, the show where we get to know the creators that make the things we love. Today, I've got a very special guest, someone that's not shy on these cameras. Someone that you know and love. It's Mr. Viking himself, Johan. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah, I mean, we've been planning this for like 3, 4 months now, so I'm really glad we were finally able to get a date.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a minute. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad too. I'm glad it's nice to connect with you.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Likewise.
yeah, yeah. We'll do this for a bit. So I want to start off with a little bit of a silly question,
Go
Johan.
for it.
This one comes from Andrew Watson from The Fool's Tale on YouTube, also, and that sort of thing. He says, very important question. If you, Johan, were attacked and had to summon your Viking persona, what weapon would you reach for?
What weapon? The funny thing about my name is that a lot of people think that I love Vikings, but
Yeah.
the Viking part is actually only because I'm from a Scandinavian country. So I know maybe surprisingly, maybe no more than the average person, but I know surprisingly little about like Vikings really and the
Sure.
history. But I mean, I think the first thing I was thinking about is probably just like a battle axe. But
Sure.
I don't know. There must be some cooler Viking weapon out there that I don't know about.
I don't know. Battle axe pretty good. I feel like also you have a nice selection of books that you could just like bludgeon them with. Maybe start
Yeah,
hurling like
true.
the thick
Some of
ones,
these
right?
books are heavy. Just like throw them.
That's funny. All right, so I want to, of course, talk with you about a variety of things. I want to get to like know you a little bit. That's my whole thing with the show.
That
Of
sounds
course, I
good.
want to also say hello, Herman. Thanks for being here from the greatest podcast in the multiverse. Hey, Bo from SFF Insiders. Yeah, glad you guys are here.
You-
Bo is very surprised you don't walk around with a sword and shield daily. Yeah.
More like a book in my hand, maybe, not a
Right.
shield. I
Right.
mean, that can work as a shield.
There you go. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. Just need a strap on it. Perfect. No. Yeah, so I want to talk about you, Johan. I want to not take this call that's coming on my watch. I want to
Yeah, I don't
um
think my phone is on mute either. I should put it on
sorry.
do not disturb.
We
Okay,
also
there
want
you
to
go.
talk about like you getting into booktube because you've only been doing booktube for like a few years, and I guess for a year prior you were posting on Twitter and Instagram, but now your booktube has blown up much more than your Instagram. We'll talk about like your growth, and then get in also to some like specific video topics. You've been talking a little bit about AI lately. You've been talking about epic fantasy. I think, or we can kind of dive into all these things. That sound good?
Yeah, very happy to.
Okay. Oh, and look at that. Also, Richard with the little belated birthday for me. I
Oh, happy
appreciate that,
birthday. I
buddy.
didn't
Thank
even
you.
know you had your birthday recently.
Just Wednesday, man. Yeah, yeah. It was a
Ah,
good one.
excellent. I hope
Very
someone
chill.
bought you at least one book or a
You know
gift
what?
card or something.
Well, first I got a $200 Amazon gift card from my in-laws, so I mean that can buy some books. But a friend of mine took me out for lunch, and he got me like a small little leather-bound set of like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, and I'm like,
Wow.
it
What
is
a
my
gift
great
that is.
shame that like I have yet to actually read the books. I'm a huge nut for the movies, and like
Mm,
you know how certain media defines like your personality for a while.
yeah,
Yes, yes, yeah. The movies that
like
was
Lord of the
that.
Rings. I think
Uh-huh.
every book fantasy book reader has like at least a
Yeah.
part of their identity is like Lord of the Rings.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've had many a friend like call me Samwise Gamgee. I'm like, I'm here for it.
That's brilliant. Yeah, my wife, she has stopped buying me books like a long time ago because she just tells me like you buy books and you receive books so often that if I buy you a book, it's not gonna be as special as something else. But she did buy this first law card or map,
Ooh.
sorry, for
Yeah.
my birthday, which was around 2 months ago. So that was quite a nice one.
That's awesome. All right. So let's start at the beginning, Johan. You've been doing kind of book media for like 3-ish years. I feel like when did you kind of first start posting on Instagram under Library of a Viking?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think probably around 3 years in total since I created my Instagram channel. I need to sneeze, so I should probably mute myself. Okay,
You do
it
that.
went back. I feel like it's gonna come in like 10 seconds. I'll try to talk.
This is the difficulty of being live,
Yeah,
right?
I created my Instagram page. Yes, hay fever season. That's it. So I created my Instagram page like around 3 years ago. I think you are correct. When it comes to the timing, I basically got back into reading when I moved to England around 4 years ago. I read a lot of Stephen King, and I was like, I have no one to talk about Stephen King with. So I went on YouTube, and I was like, oh, I wonder if anyone on YouTube talks about Stephen King. And I stumbled on Daniel Green's channel, and that was kind of like my gateway. I feel like Daniel Green is like the first person almost everyone sees if they're into like epic adult fantasy.
Sure.
So yeah, I started like binge watching him, and then I found all of these other content creators. So after a while, I was like, oh, I kind of want to try and do something similar. But I did create my Instagram channel, and I didn't show my face for more than a year because
right. Your first video on YouTube is face reveal, and you're like, why? You may be asking, why am I doing a face reveal for like when I'm only creating a channel? But that was. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no one saw my face, but actually, for me personally, it might also have something to do with coming from a place which is very, very small. I'm from the Faroe Islands, which is tiny. I mean, when you put yourself out there, and if the stuff isn't very good, you just know, even though people do encourage you, you just know people will talk about you. So by being like anonymous on the internet, no one could like judge me, and
I
don't think anyone would have said anything anyway. But just knowing that no one was actually knowing what I was doing, which was really helpful. And then after around a year, I was like, I need to try something different, and I went on YouTube, and I'm very, very glad I did.
Yeah, right.
How long have you been doing YouTube?
Now YouTube's your biggest channel by a good margin, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's also the thing I've invested like the most time in for sure. I do still post on Instagram, but not in the same way. Yeah, not as often.
I started. I think my first videos were like March last year, and still my most successful one. I recorded at like 5 a.m. almost on a whim, but it was after that terrible Wired article about Brandon Sanderson. I just talked about like my reaction, whatnot, and that got like thousands of views. But like since I think that I started first recording interviews in May, and for a while I was recording them like and not live, and then do a little edit and put them out, which is I really like. I love doing the interviews. But I transitioned to doing it live because I don't really like editing the interviews. But and they all they're I have way fewer subscribers than you do, my friend. But but it's a good time. Like doing the interviews is a great way to meet people, and I'm sure that's one of the things that you enjoy about doing this kind of thing too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just finding a community is one of the main reasons why you would start a channel, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you were like, I want to have people to talk to about Stephen King, and now you've got 40,000 people to talk to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, in real life, you don't really bump into people that know who Joe Abercrombie is or Brandon Sanderson or whatnot. But that's one of the great things about the internet, is that you can create a relatively big community within a very, very, very small niche, if you think about like worldwide basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, like, was it university that brought you to the UK away from the islands that you had grown up on?
Yes, it was. I used to work in a bank, so I went from A levels to working in a bank, and I just felt like it would probably be good for me to have a university degree under my belt, and being married to someone that is from the Faroe Islands as well. But my wife has lived most of her life in the UK, or around half of her life in the UK. So for her, it was quite natural to move back here for our studies. I mean, you can study in the Faroe Islands, but we have a university which is like tiny, so the options are very limited. So most people end up moving away. So that was around 4.5 years ago. So I finished my studies now, and I got to work. And we decided, at least for now, to stick around in England.
Sure. Yeah. So you came to the UK, you started reading a bunch, and then you needed people to talk to about it.
And COVID helped.
Right.
The pandemic and everything. Like, you just had so much time to read.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Andrew in the chat. Finally, I go live at a reasonable hour. Yes, had to accommodate.
I kind of demanded this. Hi, Andrew.
Andrew, at the top, I asked your question about what he'd grab for, and he said a battle axe. So, and then we also said, maybe he could just grab the book. So,
Could
there's
be a
that.
Brandon Sanderson hardback as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Right. That would get the job done, I feel.
Definitely.
um, um, cool. So, like, I'm curious to, like, obviously you started on Instagram primarily. I mean, you were doing a Twitter and that sort of thing. I get you talked a little bit about, kind of sort of wanting to be anonymous. Did you kind of have to hype yourself up to kind of put your face out on BookTube? And like, I know, like, again, in that first video, you're like, I'm going to give myself permission to quit. So like, how important was
Yeah.
that too? Like how I imagine that these days, like that, do you still kind of give yourself permission to quit? Is that important? Or are you like, nah, it's just, you're fully into it now and like completely enjoying it now?
I mean, there's several questions there. The fun thing
Yes.
about my
Yes.
face reveal is that my cousin's wife randomly found my page on Instagram, and she was able to figure out that it was me just by book pictures, because she saw my wife had liked multiple of those pictures,
Yeah.
and they recognized like the room and stuff. And I just got a message. It's like, "Is this you?" I was around like 8,000 followers from my cousin, and I was like, "Okay, I can't keep this secret for much longer."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I kept the secret for a while, but yeah, after a while, I think after I reached like 11 or 12,000 followers, it got to a point where I didn't want too many people to find me randomly. I thought it
Hmm.
was be better to actually just tell them, because it's nicer than them being absolutely shocked. Regarding
Right.
with YouTube and enjoying it, yes, I'm definitely enjoying YouTube. It's
Hmm.
taught me so much, giving me
Hmm.
a good community and everything. Yeah, so yeah, I really enjoy the content. Yeah, making content and so on. Um, as you mentioned in the beginning of this video, like more recently, I've gone a bit more into like commentary videos and like, yeah, having discussions and stuff like that, which I'm actually loving the process of making those videos. I think maybe coming from university also helps with
Yeah.
some of those things. But what I have found is that while I really enjoy diving into these topics that are quite tricky, it also has a much stronger reaction.
Mm.
So I'm trying to deal with the fact that I'm having more people on my channel that may not like agree with me, because while I'm trying to be very, very respectful and wholesome, I might still like voice opinions that people just really do not agree with. And yeah, it's just part of it. But I'm trying to be authentic. Like I've
Sure.
always enjoyed watching other people that are authentic and are willing to state what they believe in. And yeah, I suppose there's a risk there, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. How dare you have an opinion? Sure. What are you thinking? Having an opinion and putting it on the internet? Unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah. I get the sense. I definitely want to kind of dive into more of your in depth, and then yeah, how your university work is kind of tied into some of
Mhm.
the commentary you've been doing lately. That's pretty neat. But again, kind of sticking with the beginning, I get the sense that you did a little bit of like research as you were. I mean, some of your most popular videos are kind of meta, where you like, well, I watched a bunch of BookTube, and here are my conclusions, right? But I
Mm.
like I I've I, I assume that as you were watching those booktube videos, you were also sort of like taking notes for your own channel. Is that correct? Like, because again, you haven't been doing it that long, but you've like you're doing pretty well at this game. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah. So when I was considering starting a booktube channel, I knew I was relatively late into the game. Like booktube had existed for at least 10 years at that point. Daniel Green had like 200,000, 300,000 subscribers at that point. Obviously, it's way bigger now. But yeah, like some of the business things, because I did study business, really, really helped. Like when you are entering a new market, you need to identify a gap in the market. And I was quite quickly able to see, and also like I watched, I don't know how many, and I still do, a ridiculous amount of videos on how to do YouTube well. How can you
Mm,
do thumbnails? How can you do titles, video ideas? And I quite quickly realized that if I'm ever going to have a platform that is bigger than like 500 subscribers, then I will need to rethink how I make videos. So very quickly, when I decided to do like monthly wraps, I was like, I can't do a June wrap up because that title is going to be searched, 10,000 times and going to be made 10,000 times. And being a small channel, no one is going to find my video. So I really was thinking through a lot of these, the more basic booktube ideas. How can I make them slightly different to better my odds to actually be found in the algorithm? So, but again, I didn't create my channel just to have a big platform and grow. But I always knew that if I was going to create videos, I wanted people to watch my videos. I think everyone that is on YouTube, they want people to watch their videos, at least in some kind of sense. And
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I could watch into details about, but I'll stop there.
No, I think it's fascinating. But yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if we're making videos just for ourselves, they'd be unlisted, right? But
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, some people, like, it was interesting. I went to a convention around a year and a half ago, and there was loads of bloggers there, and I was sitting at a table with a relatively small creator, and she actually told me that I think she was around 600-700 subscribers, and due to mental health reasons, she said she started getting really anxious if her channel started growing too quickly. And she was actually really happy with being at around 600 to 700 subscribers. So I just want to also mention that I do appreciate that not everyone is interested in having a big platform. Some people just want to make videos and have 5-10 people to chat with, and that's all absolutely fine as well.
That's
just
fair.
Different reasons why you create channels, I suppose.
That's an interesting point. So you carrying that point, you have a large community. You do have a Discord now, right?
So I did create a Discord. I don't know, maybe it's a bit less than a year ago, but I've actually abandoned my Discord server quite a while ago.
Oh, really?
I just found it became too much work. I didn't have time to be active on it at all. So yeah, now I primarily make videos and in the comments and stuff like that. Patreon as well does allow you to create chats for your Patreon. So I've actually started using that quite a bit. That's where we have our book club discussions. I find that more manageable because I already use Patreon. This is just one additional thing on the same platform. But yeah, I just found Discord to be very overwhelming. And there's so many great people doing it, like Matt's Book Review, Mike's Book Review. There's so many brilliant creators having really good Discords. And I just instantly knew, I was looking at their Discords and I was like, I don't have the energy to make my Discord as good as theirs. There's just no way. And after a while, I just decided to stop posting. So it still exists. It probably does, but I haven't logged in for 5 months at least.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean that was how you balance it all, but that's pretty much it. Is you've picked and choose, and that makes sense. Yeah. Shout out to Bo Kelly's SFF Insiders Discord. I really like it. Great community there. But I know that Bo is in there all the time, and so is Christopher Navo in there. Just trying to.
Do you have a Discord, or are you part of one?
I'm sort of part of that SFF Insiders also, which is nice. Yeah, I mean, because otherwise, I knew that I would get overwhelmed. It was something that I thought that would be a cool thing to do. I can't do it on my own. I don't know how Andrew Watson does it, but he's doing it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's a really, really good platform. It's you can do so much with it, really. But yeah, I mean, the reason why I don't post as much on Instagram anymore is because I want to do YouTube really well, and I just find it near impossible just being one person to be able to do everything well. So you kind of have to choose, as you said yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty bad about choosing, but kind of to that point, I'll go ahead and get this question out of the way because I know it's coming. Richard in the chat. My question for Johan is this: when is the reader going to become the writer? Do you have ambitions of writing someday? Is that on the radar?
It's a good question. I usually say no, which I know a lot of people are very, very shocked about. During the pandemic, right when lockdown hit the UK, my wife was instantly saying okay, we'll have lots of time. We should definitely try and at least explore one new skill. And I had started reading at that point, and I was like, okay, the obvious one is maybe I should try and write a short story or something.
Sure.
And so I watched I watched a couple of videos on writing. And then I went out and ordered Stephen King's book on writing. I'm also a big Stephen King fan, and people said there's some Like he does also go through some of his life events. I'm not sure if you read that book.
Oh, I have.
Um,
Yeah, it's such a fascinating mix, as you're saying, of like of craft and autobiography.
Yes, exactly. And as being a big King fan, I found it so interesting to hear about his accident and how
Yeah,
Carrie survived, like being thrown in the bin and all of these things, really. But
right.
yeah, reading that book, I really enjoyed it. It was a good book, and it's weird, like reading that book. It just made me realize that I don't think I can write before I had even started. Like the more I learned about the craft, the more I just was like, I know nothing about writing, and the mountain just seemed to be like become very very big. And but I did give it a try. Like I sat down a couple of times, started just writing, and I think I wrote like maybe 2 or 3 pages of something, and I read it through, and I was like, this is so bad that I was like this is just too bad. I can't do this, and I basically abandoned it. But the interesting thing is that I've never perceived myself as a creative person throughout my whole life. I've never played instruments, never been really good at sports, never painted, or
Huh.
all of these. A lot of people have like creative stuff they do.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never had any of those things until I started doing like social media stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I think naturally maybe my brain is quite logical and organized,
Sure.
and yeah, I'm married to someone that paints and stuff, and it fascinates me because I feel sometimes I'm lacking that part of my brain that
I,
allows you to create stuff.
I kind of like I get you. I'm always I feel to me the visual arts are just magic, you know?
Mm.
Like anyone that is able to just draw something and it looks amazing. I'm like, how I'm pretty sure that's witchcraft. That's
Yeah,
witchcraft, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Like all
Um
my best friends are really good and talented musicians, and they're able to like write songs and stuff. And I'm like, how do you write a song? Like, I love music, but being able to write a song just it baffles me.
well, that's really interesting though. Like, so obviously you had like kind of an analytical approach to and a logical approach to starting your channel.
Yeah.
You're doing some research. You're kind of looking for sort of a market gap that you could fill. Really smart.
Mm.
These days, do you sort of look at it as like does it as a creative endeavor or how? What is sort of your mindset about BookTube now? Like, are you trying to grow it into a business and full time job or what?
Mm. Very interesting question. I don't really have like an end strategy, so I can just
Mm,
get that out of the way. What I'm hoping for is I want to grow my channel and I want to generate more money for a specific reason. Um, because one day, hopefully not in too far distant future, maybe within 3 to 5 years, well, depending on what God gives us, but we would love to become parents one day. And I just know like reading books, having a booktube channel, working, like most likely I'll have to either abandon my channel or post like not as often, or I need to find a different solution. And what I've basically done for more than a year now is I've used my Patreon as a way to get 2 to 3 videos a month, like professionally edited, which has worked well. But I think my hope and dream is that by the point we one day get a child, if that ever happens,
yeah.
that my Patreon or my channel, whatever, will generate enough income that all my videos can be professionally edited, because that's going to save me a lot of time. So I think
I
at least
see.
for now, that's kind of my ambition with the channel. But another, like, if I'm not talking about strategy and business,
Yeah.
genuinely, one of my hopes and aims with this channel is just to make fantasy a something that people feel more comfortable reading, because I think fantasy is something that people often feel is very very nerdy, or for losers or whatever. But I found it's a beautiful genre with so much value, and if there's anything I can do to empower how people like perceive fantasy, then I would also be happy.
Nice. I dig it. I like it. That's really cool. I like that you have such like a concrete goal and you're building towards it too. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah, I would
go
love to
ahead.
hear about you. Like, are you do you have any hopes and dreams for your channel, or is it more just like a fun side hobby at the moment? There's nothing wrong with if you don't have any plans. I'm just wondering.
I have too many plans. How
Oh,
much
okay.
time do we have? No. I I I really like doing the interviews. It's a
Mm,
fantastic way to meet people. It's a fantastic networking. But I've
yeah.
also like come to the hard realization. I don't think, like, even Daniel B. Green has started his second channel for his interviews, right?
Mm.
Because unless you have Brandon Sanderson and Joe Abercrombie talking to each other, then maybe you can get like 50,000 viewers. But other than that, like, it's my best performing interview is about worse as my worst performing other type of content. So if I want to do, like, look at this as like a business at all, I need to think about making other content too. So I mean,
So I mean, what
the
reason why I don't do interviews as often, even though I enjoy them, they're also low effort. Like, you don't have to do as much editing and stuff like that. But as you said, it can be very challenging within this tiny niche to get many people to view them.
Right.
I've done a couple of interviews which have performed quite well on my channel, but that's because I haven't framed it as an interview. I've done how to become a successful self-published author with Ryan Cahill, which was an interview, but I pre-recorded it and I edited it into more like an interview. And recently I did one with Philip Chase where we talked about like why is Lord of the Rings so good after 75 years. So if I had titled that video "Chat with
an interview with
Chase, that automatically would have limited how many people would watch it. But if we say, Professor explains why Lord of the Rings is so good after 75 years, automatically people, or at least there's a bigger chance you'll actually reach a bigger viewership.
Yeah, no, that's totally valid. That's a good point. I know that. Yeah, and this is something I've discussed with like another YouTuber before. Also, I was kind of discussing it with Jed Hearn a little while ago. He did Wizards, Warriors, and Words for a while, and then he the coordinating that with all the hosts that were all around the world became too much, and he's just completely leaned into his own solo, and he's exploded since then. He went from like 1,000 or 2,000 subs to like 70,000+.
He's great.
His stuff is good. I think too, like there's such demand too for writing related content, which I also find like weird. Like there's so many more there's readers than there are writers, just inherently, right? There must be, and yet I think we're kind of at the point where YouTube like is a place that people are really seeking out to learn things often, so that's something that I think about too. Like I've never felt like kind of comfortable like wanting to do content where I am trying to teach someone to write, because I'm working on some stuff to write. I want to do that sort of thing. But like, what the hell do I know, right? Like I've paid for Mary Robinette Kowal's Patreon. She can teach me. She's got a Hugo and a Locust and a Nebula. Like I'll learn from her. No one needs to learn from me. But now I'm thinking like, what if I do some content where instead of me being the teacher, I'm like looking at other people's stuff and pulling out what am I learning from that? So you see other people doing similar things where they've looked at Neil Gaiman's masterclass or that sort of thing and doing videos around that. That's some of the stuff I'm thinking about, but
that's cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know much about the writing niche, but I know like Jed Hearn, there's some big content creators out there that are doing really, really well.
Right.
It makes you wonder, maybe that niche doesn't have that many creators that do high quality videos.
Right.
And if you're one of the only 5 or only 10 that produces high quality videos, then it's maybe relatively more easy to break through than if you're like in gaming,
Oh, you're right.
If you're an amazing gamer, you're competing against maybe 10,000 other amazing content creators. Is incredible. I chatted with him a couple of times, and he's similar to me with like that mindset, but he's just way better at it.
That's it. Tell me more. Like, what do you mean? In what way are you kind of similar in the mindset? What ways do you think that he's better at it than you are?
Oh, there's many ways, but he does it full time now.
Yes, which helps, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to talk like, I don't know if anyone finds this interesting, but I'm glad you're finding this interesting.
I do, yeah. I mean,
but when it comes to YouTube and stuff like that, people have mentioned that if you want to live off YouTube, you need to have like several income streams. So people often focus a lot on monetization on YouTube. Well, that's the point I'm going to get at. But I think generally people say you need to have like 3 to 4 like income streams.
Right.
So it can be like selling courses, merchandise, Patreon, sponsors, and then also YouTube revenue. And my impression, at least from Jed, is that he is really good at almost all of those. Like he does courses, like
Hmm.
authors come to him. I'm not sure what he charges for that, but that's a good like revenue stream. He has
Yeah.
sponsors, he has really good ad revenue, and like affiliate links, all of these things. So that's one area. He
Hmm.
is incredibly good at making titles and thumbnails,
Mm.
which is something I'm constantly trying to improve. But I think he just really is good. I've sometimes asked for feedback from him for some of my concept, and like he instantly just says like do this and that, and then improves it. Because that's one thing that also quite early on, I was listening to Mr. Beast and other people talking about that you can have the most
Yeah.
amazing video out there, but
Right.
if no one clicks on it, then you're not getting any views. It doesn't really matter, you know.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you can constantly learn. But I'm really trying still on a monthly basis to improve my titles and thumbnails. Because yeah, as I said, if no one clicks on it, no one will watch it. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
some areas he's better. I wish I knew how to make thumbnails like he does, because he has like flying dragons and blue smoke and all of these things in his thumbnails, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I want to do it, but I
Right.
don't know how.
So like you're outsourcing some of your editing these days. Are you doing all the thumbnails yourself?
Yes, thumbnails and
Yeah.
titles. I did once trial someone to make like 2 3 thumbnails for me, and it was all right. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't end up continuing.
Sure. 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 Yeah, it's tricky, right? And
Mm,
it's hard to. I've listened to like a couple things where Mr. Beast is talking about his videos too, and like in the especially with like I think he has a couple interviews with Colin and Samir, and they're
mm,
talking about they'll get in a brainstorming session about different video ideas, but one of the first things they talk about is what is the thumbnail and the title going to be, because yeah, as you said, like if you can't get people to click on it, then it could be the most amazing video in the world, but no one's going to watch it. I
yeah,
think that's interesting. Similarly about book covers, right? I mean,
yeah,
how many books have you picked up just because the cover has been amazing?
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's one thing that I'm not sure if you've experienced as well. But since I've become involved in this community,
Yeah.
one thing I occasionally miss is that feeling of going into a bookstore, walking through the books and having no idea like what is good and what is not, and just picking something up because it looks cool. I
Yeah.
never do that anymore because now when I go down the fantasy aisle, like I will
Yeah.
know like 80% of the books there probably, and
Sure.
I'll be like, that book has received bad reviews. That is average. Patrick loved that book, but he didn't like that book, so I'll pick up that book. So you don't have the sense of wonder anymore when you go into a bookstore. But on the other hand, it's less likely I'll pick up a book now that I hate than I used to.
Sure.
So yeah, it's probably
That's
a net positive.
right, right, right. Yeah, it's and I hear you, but like I also kind of the other side of the coin has been really fun. Like
Mm,
after I had lunch with my friend for my birthday the other day, I popped into
yeah.
the Barnes and Nobles for a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, hey, Travis Baldry's got bookshops and bone dust like right up here at the front." I
Mm.
talked to him. That's
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Like
That's
that
exactly it.
aspect like is really neat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Kind of
incredible. And that's one thing that's mind blowing, I think, when you start a booktube channel is that you watch these content creators for maybe a couple of years or something, and
right.
you think like they will never respond to me or acknowledge I exist or something. But even when you have a small channel, at least in my experience, I found a lot of creators who are very like
Right.
approachable and happy to chat and happy to talk, happy to
Yeah.
collaborate. Um, both authors and content creators. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Book people are good people. That's one of the nice things. Like
Yeah.
I did
Yeah,
talk with
absolutely.
Travis. He is a former game developer. One of the things we talked about is like the difference between
Mm,
book people versus game people.
yeah. Yeah.
Was occasionally that community can be a little toxic, but much nicer
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. And I found now, like with my epic fantasy styling videos, again,
Mhm.
like I'm really glad that people are having good discussions and having different opinions. But yeah, it's interesting because obviously I'm trying to make some points about a community that maybe I don't have as much knowledge about, which maybe I should before I make a video. I don't know. That's up to people to judge, I suppose. But
Sure.
yeah, I find that those clashes can sometimes be there. But generally, and also genuinely, like book people are incredible, and I
Yes.
love the community. Like I think the toxicity is, at least within epic fantasy, is very very low.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Well, I want to talk about the epic fantasy, but I got one more kind of more general question before we get into that.
Yeah.
And it like this is very general, almost to the point of being silly, but serious. Like,
Go on.
how do you read so many dang books, man? Like, have you done any like sort of like training on speed reading, or has it just come naturally to read pretty quickly?
So I'm married to someone that reads crazy quickly. Like people say
Okay.
I read fast, but my wife, she just, I don't even understand it. Sometimes it stresses me out to sit on the couch with her and read a book because she's just like, we'll flip the pages every like 2, 3 seconds. I'm like, how? So I can kind of relate to what you're saying there. I
Uh-huh.
think it's a mixture of loads of different factors.
Uh-huh.
I read like basically every single day now for 4.5 years. So I think over a longer period of time, that has helped me increase my
Right.
reading speed. One thing, the fact that I'm living in England now, I don't have any family in the vicinity.
Sure.
So family is great, obviously, but the fact that they're not close means I don't have as many birthdays and stuff like that to go through. No, go to. Then I try my best to prioritize reading.
Hmm.
If you try to map out how much waste there is in a day or how much time you waste in a day, you'll probably be surprised. Even I waste a lot of time, but I try my best to not. Yeah, I try to minimize how much time I waste. So I think those are some of the things I try to implement. Oh yeah, I also don't have any children. And another thing, when I was a uni student, I know it's different depending on what course, but my course had a big focus on independent study, where
Hmm.
you didn't have as many lectures. So those 4 years, genuinely, like I had 15 to 20 hours of teaching a week, and then 20 hours of independent study. But a lot of a lot of the weeks, you didn't need to invest 20 hours, and those hours often went to reading instead. So it's just a mixture of not having children, not having family close by, and trying to prioritize.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like, yeah, I mean, spending a lot of time reading will have you read more. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I'm fully expecting one day to not read as much as I do at the moment.
but
And I'm not
have
like
you?
I don't read 100 books a year. I try to read around 50.
Like, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
novel a
it's
week.
still a lot,
And
but I'm
then, like,
more.
it depends too. Like, I mean, on the book, right? I feel, sometimes, it's like a scorecard of like, oh, I read this many books, which is like, I don't love that, but
Mm,
and then not all books are created equal, right? Like a Stormlight book is not the same as like Sister Samurai in terms of word count, but
yeah.
Sister Samurai is a fun novella.
And they both count as one.
Right? Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it's very
Um,
very true.
So when you're reading, because I kind of have poked around in a speed reading book, there was a while I was like, I don't want to speed read because I feel like I'll
Mm,
diminish the experience, right?
no,
But
yeah,
starting to feel like, I want to at least give it a shot just because
mhm,
there's so much cool media out there, so many cool
yeah.
books. I want to be able to consume more of it. Maybe it's worth investigating, right?
You have a finite amount of time, don't you? So
Right,
yeah,
right, right. So one of the things that they were talking about is the way that we learn to read is that we read out loud.
mm,
So we're like
yeah,
inherently limited by our speaking speed because when we're reading, we're sort of speaking the words out in our head. But
yeah,
one of the things that it was talking about is adjusting that thought process with reading so that you don't necessarily need to speak every word in your head and you don't to have retention. I'm still kind of playing with this concept to experience it and
yeah.
utilize it. But is that like your actual reading experience? Are you sort of saying every single word in your head or not?
No, I mean I did on Skillshare, and again I'm not sure how good those were, but yeah, a couple of years ago I did a couple of speed reading courses on Skillshare. Again, my thought process was very similar to yours. Is that I didn't just want to read loads just to read loads.
Yeah.
My my thing was that I had like 300 books on my TBR, and I really wanted to read them all. And I just knew like if I was gonna be able to read them, it would take me at the moment, 10 years or something.
Right. Right.
If there's any way you can increase your reading speed by just 20%,
Hmm.
it's instantly going to take you maybe 5 years to read 300 books instead of 10. So yeah, I do implement some reading strategies, speed reading strategies into my reading. I think I've stopped saying the words out loud in my mind,
Hmm.
but yeah, like one thing you can start with, which I found really helpful, and you might have seen this, but like literally just putting your finger on the line and then
Hmm.
just putting your finger on the line and read, and then you can just try and go faster slowly as a training. So you're not going to do this for the rest of your life, but just to help your eyes to read a bit faster. And yeah, like again, I think skim reading can work well depending on the author. So like Ted Williams, he will spend so much time describing what a barn looks like. And for some people, that's really important to read every single detail about what a barn looks like. But for most readers, it's not going to impact the story at all. So you can
Right.
read like some bits faster. And I think generally when I pick up a book, the first 20 pages I read slower because I'm trying to adjust to the writing style. But
Mm,
after like around page 20, I'm able to speed up because I kind of get how the author writes and where descriptions are. For me, it's not really important to know if a character has blonde hair or gray hair or black hair. So if I read a
right.
bit faster and I forget those little details, I'm okay with it. But
Yeah. 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 Same. Same. I had like, not only do I not, I'm terrible about remembering that sort of detail, which is often inconsequential.
mm,
But then sometimes I don't remember characters' names, which is that what I feel like I should be remembering.
yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you
yeah.
feel like there's a dialogue and you have no idea what's going on, then definitely you're reading too fast.
Well,
But that
yeah.
doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
I would say that often for me, fortunately. So I probably have found like a good reading pace for me.
Nice. Nice. So epic fantasy, yeah, like I've been having some discussions about epic fantasy and whether or not it's dead. And I guess you already got 2 videos on whether or not it's dead, but is it dead?
Yes, I posted a video right before this live stream, and there's
Yeah.
already loads of comments.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like how like some of the comments have been spicy. How have you been like react? Do any of those kind of like get under your skin, or has it been like,
Mm.
it's cool to have a dialogue?
Yeah, it's interesting because I generally I welcome all viewpoints, and if people strongly disagree with me, that's absolutely fine. I think when you make a video where you try to discuss a topic which is incredibly complex,
Hmm.
you run a massive risk of either not saying something which is important to discussion,
Hmm.
or you end up saying something but you don't go into enough detail that people think you're maybe dismissing something. um so I kind of knew beforehand, before I made any of those videos, like there's going to be a reaction. Some people will agree, some people will disagree.
Yeah.
I think up to this point, up to before 2024, generally most of my videos have been very non-controversial. There was very
Right.
little room for disagreements. Like, yeah, maybe I didn't love a book, but people are generally okay. I found this year I really tried my best to be respectful and deal with issues in a nuanced way. But I still find that I occasionally receive a lot of comments that are where people are very, very angry or feel like I've dismissed a certain group of people, or I'm making some kind of error. And
Mhm.
I do find that those comments can have an impact on my mental health. I try my best to, yeah, like reply very respectfully. It's okay that people have different opinions, but it's really weird how the human psyche is, because I might receive 99 really positive comments. People are supportive, either neutral or positive. But then
Right.
you receive like one comment that is maybe quite negative or very, very negative,
And that's
and
the
that's
one
the
that
one that
sticks with
sticks in
you.
your mind.
Yeah.
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 And also, like maybe people see me differently now because I've decided to go a bit more into these more controversial topics. But my aim has never been to create like, be a malicious booktuber that spreads around hate. But I've
Sure.
also like recognized that the content creators I enjoy, they have integrity. They are willing to speak about things they think are important, and those are the creators I enjoy watching. So I know they also receive so much hate, but content creators that don't have any opinions about anything, I don't enjoy watching. So I decided I don't want to be one of those. But yeah, I run the risk of receiving more negative comments, and I definitely do receive negative comments. And yeah, I try my best not to let it impact my mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you make a good point. To quote Hamilton the musical, "If you stand for nothing, Burr, what will you fall for?"
Yeah.
You got to pick some fights, right? And like, yeah, Daniel B. Green has been, calling out Audible, same way
Mhm.
that Sanderson has. I respect it. I respect it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like I yeah. I mean, there's some no, not booktubers, some YouTubers where occasionally I've been like, please just state your opinion, or be a bit more like a man or a woman for this
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I'm just trying my best to be my integral self. What I think maybe can be the most hurtful is that when people think that I am intentionally being malicious, which
Sure.
I'm really not trying to be. But again, it's a risk you run with having a YouTube channel, and I'm not going to stop making videos just because some people disagree with me.
Right, right, and you shouldn't. Yeah, yeah. I
No, no,
think
definitely. Yeah.
that's good. Um, all right, let's talk. I mean, so, I mean, you know, we're broaching this topic, and we sort of broached it with like epic fantasy, but let's kind of dive in a little bit with the AI conversation and
Mm.
tell like you know, I thought it was interesting in the introduction of one of your videos. You kind of mentioned that you're coming to this as a little bit of an expert because of
Yeah.
your university background. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I studied I did a master's in business strategy and innovation management. And it's up to us to identify a gap in business and write a master's thesis about it at the end of the program. And I was just thinking, like, I'm involved in booktube. Is there anything I can write about in this community? Because I have contacts with publishers and authors. There must be something. And AI just came up again and again on fantasy news. And then you heard about like Paulini had an AI cover and all of
Mm,
these things. So I just like made a Google search and I was like, is there any research about AI in publishing? And I was able to find like one report. It wasn't even like an article, like an academic article. And I was like, there's nothing written about from an academic point of view about
sure.
AI within publishing. And yeah, I just decided to go for it. And I'm really happy I did. I was able to, again, I'm not allowed to say who I interviewed because they're so strict about stuff like that. But I
Okay.
interviewed like some pretty big names, like authors and editors and stuff like that. And that was a real joy for sure. So I quite enjoyed it, even though it was stressful.
Neat. Okay. What were some of like the conclusions that you came to in that academic paper?
Yeah, I mean, the main conclusions are that people generally are okay with AI being used in like operations. So speeding up processes, like removing paper, all of those things to make the creative process faster, they're very, very okay with. So if you're talking about like getting an AI to write a contract for you, people are generally okay with that.
Hmm.
So those were definitely some of the more like positive benefits. I think I could definitely conclude generally that people in the industry are quite negative about AI and the rise of AI. There's loads of worries about jobs being lost. Yeah, that's a big concern. A lot of like ethical concerns as well.
Hmm.
Like when you
Hmm.
use an AI at the moment, since there's so little legislation about how to use an AI, a lot of AIs are trained using copyright material and no one knows.
Right.
People are not compensated for, like, if Midjourney uses art, for example,
Right.
and maybe your art has been used in the algorithm, but you don't know and you don't get compensated when Midjourney uses your art. So there's loads of like concerns in that area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I wonder too, like what lawyers would think about AI being used for contracts, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and I'm sure they're also worried about that.
yeah,
I
I've
think
spoken
generally,
even
like, people
to.
are okay with AI as long as it doesn't infringe on humans creating art. And where we are at the moment is that a lot of people at least perceive AI as something that it's not being used to help us clean the dishes faster or vacuum clean our house faster, but it's infringing in areas which we didn't really think about, like art and writing and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. See, that's interesting too, though, because like, I mean, I've talked to a few people that are software developers,
Mm.
and some of them have had concerns about AI taking their jobs. Now, some of them have used the AI that's available, and they're like, never mind, I'm not concerned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like at the same time, it's gonna, this is the worst that AI is ever going to be. It's
Mm.
only going to get better and better and better and better, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's such an interesting point because I feel like.
There was, oh, I mean, since you're interested in this topic, there was one like big outlier I had an interview with,
Mhm,
who at the moment also had lots of ethical concerns
mhm,
and was against using AI in its current form. But he talked about, for example, like crime authors will really benefit from AI in future. Because if you write like a really good whodunit mystery, you can ask the AI, can you find plot holes? And it might like, instantly find the plot holes in your novel. And then you can go back and rewrite it or help you identify things that are incredibly generic or done like 10,000 times this year. You know, if you write like a chapter and the AI can say, well, this chapter is very similar to all of these books, maybe you should rewrite it as an assistant. That could be really beneficial, which I found really interesting. Um, he mentioned this person, and I'm not really sure if I agree with him, but he said that it will also benefit smaller authors. Because maybe in the future you can go to an AI and say, I want to read, and you can say the most obscure specific thing in the world. And at the moment, Google will always just recommend, the
Hmm.
bibliography by Obama or Hillary Clinton, or
Sure,
all
sure,
these
sure.
best-selling books will always
Right.
come to the top, and the lesser-known books are buried underneath, page 3,000 on Amazon. But he said, like in the future, an AI could potentially help you find these obscure books that you really want to read, but you just have no way of finding it.
That's really interesting.
What I would counter there is that we said that about a lot of things, and I would just think that someone would pay the AI to have those books be at the top anyway. But we'll see.
Yeah, I like that idea, like AI as a librarian that can help you find something that's very tailored to your specific taste. That's interesting. I had similar thoughts about that being a future for AI, but I didn't imagine it as a librarian. I thought like that might be fun from the consumer perspective if you had those really really like specific like let's say, man, I really like Dungeon Crawler Carl, but like the monsters I don't really like, and I really really hate cats, so I want
Mm,
Dungeon Crawler Carl with like a dog companion and totally different like monsters. And
yeah.
like I think a generative AI could do that for you,
Mm,
or something else that was super super niche, and if you wrote the pitch correctly, generative AI could make it for you. And
yeah.
that's like, if I don't know, like I think the toothpaste isn't going back in the tube, um, which is kind of
Yeah.
junk, but like,
Yeah. And at the moment, there's again, there's no regulation, no legislation on how and when you can use AI, and that leads to loads of worries about, what the impact might be about
yeah,
AI. So I totally think there are many ethical concerns we really should
right,
keep in mind before we fully embrace AI. 'Cause, AI is wonderful in a lot of ways, but there's also some, bit like frightful implications of AI as well.
right.
So I'm not sure if humanity is going to be able to figure out how to use AI in the best way, but let's hope.
Let's hope. Let's
Yeah.
hope. Yeah, I'd rather have a helpful AI than a Terminator.
Yeah, I think that's what most people hope.
Right, right. I think
Yeah.
Bo's got an interesting point here. It's being AI being pitched everywhere as being the one-stop solution for absolutely everything. It's currently a solution looking for a problem that we currently don't have. And I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting point. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have made similar points about AI's impact in the areas at the moment, which we didn't really think it would have a big impact on yet. We would think it would speed up and make our lives easier, not like take our jobs.
You know what's funny? Well, I thought, I mean, like 10 years ago, I thought for sure like AI was going to take some jobs, but the one that I thought was going to be the immediately on the chopping block was actually like long distance truckers,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
because that to me that seemed like it was kind of a straightforward problem that people were already solving. Like there was a DARPA challenge to do like autonomous vehicles out in the desert, and like
Mm.
I think people won that in like 2006 or something,
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I feel like one of the things that's actually stopping that is liability. I
Mm.
think like a company like Walmart isn't willing to take on the risk of being responsible for all of their autonomous trucks getting into accidents, whereas they can currently shift that onto the driver.
Yeah. And I also just think it sounds like that problem is more complex than people originally thought, with like pedestrians and traffic lights and different cars, and
Yeah,
so much variation in that process. But yeah, I mean, again, that will probably one day happen, but that's also a big societal concern because I think in America, there's like 10 million truckers or something.
it's
And you
insane.
just have this question, what are they going to do? Like historically, when we've had loads of jobs being erased from areas like trucking, generally we don't have a good track record of reskilling them to different
Right,
areas because they're not going to learn
right,
to code. They drive trucks because they don't want to learn how to code. So we need to find
right.
different jobs for them. And the question is, what are those jobs?
Yeah, right. And I had this conversation with like a libertarian friend of mine, and he's like, who cares? It's not our job to care. No one
Mm,
cared like what happened to lamplighters, and like, okay, like yeah, whatever.
yeah,
I think we could do a little bit better than that, and I hope that we could do a little bit better than that as a society, especially because like those sorts, that kind of change could evolve rapidly and impact a huge group of people very rapidly. Whereas like a
yeah,
transition from like lamplighters to electricity is not going to be so rapid, right?
no, no,
That's one of
exactly.
the. Do you read much? I know obviously you read a lot of fantasy. Do you read much science fiction?
Science fiction is something I definitely need to dip my toes more into. I think maybe I read 20 science fiction books in my life, so not
Really?
that
Okay, wow.
many. What about you? Are you a big sci-fi reader?
I like sci-fi. I like well, and I think like what's unique about sci-fi is it's the only genre that imagines the future. You know,
Mm, yeah,
and so hope some of. I feel like the broad zeitgeist of tastes change in along with how life in general is. So dystopia was very hot for a while when things were a little bit
yeah,
kind of more chill in the world, and now cozy fantasy is very hot because the world feels like a mess.
yeah,
um um but yeah, I like something like a Star Trek that can bring some optimism to the future.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
oh,
definitely. I was reading a Reddit thread this morning about I forgot what it's called. It was something but along the lines of like, what are publisher missing from fantasy? And one of the
mhm,
top comments was a future which isn't dystopian. And I thought,
right.
yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But I enjoy sci-fi. But a big issue I've had with the sci-fi genre, which is very much a personal thing, is the jargon. Like, it doesn't interest me in knowing how a technology works. And I know it adds some credibility to the story by actually trying to explain how stuff works.
sure.
But yeah, just reading like about maths and physics and stuff. Yeah.
So maybe not a fan of like The Martian or Project Hail Mary then?
No, I love those books,
Really? Okay.
but those are different in my opinion because I don't know if you read any Adam Jakowski.
I haven't
Um,
yet. I need
no,
to, but
but and there's also other sci-fi authors out there where the exploration of the technology becomes so technical and
yeah.
so there's so much of it that you're just like, I have no idea what's going on here. I think Project Hail Mary, the primary aim, and with The Martian, the primary aim is really to write a really brilliant character story,
Right.
and then you have some complex science sprinkled in to that
Right.
story. But I wouldn't say that's the primary focus is to explore a unique concept or technology. The concept
Right.
is, or the primary focus is the character, and then we have
Yes.
some great concepts as well, and some great technology explored as well.
Right. I also feel like Andy Weir does such a good job of making the technology approachable and the science approachable.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, he's a master.
yeah, he's great.
Ryan says, "I hope we don't end up in the Red Rising universe." That seems good. I haven't read it,
Mm,
but I'm familiar. Maybe not that. Uh, Richard recommends Jurassic Park. Have you ever read Jurassic Park? I'm sure
I,
you've seen the movie.
where is it? There's one. I definitely have the other one somewhere.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
but no, I've had this for 2 years, both of them. I don't know
Really?
what the first one is. So definitely something that's on my to be read list, and everyone says it's brilliant. So I think I'll have a great time with it. I just need to
Yeah,
get around to it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, thanks
What
for the
a
recommendation.
that's taking that to another question. I wanted to ask you. You're in this position where you've got your Patreon. You've got what are you at like 20,000 I think on your Instagram.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, around there.
and 40,000 plus on your YouTube. So, and you mentioned kind of early on that your wife doesn't get you books anymore because like you either get your own books or you receive a lot of books.
Mm.
So, like, how overwhelming does it? Because I'm sure that you get tons and tons of like review requests or like arcs just sent to you, and like, is it is it still kind of? I imagine probably the novelty of it has worn off.
Yeah, it's a good question. The novelty, yeah, in some ways, yeah, it probably has worn off a bit. What I decided quite early on in my booktube journey is to try and be at least articulate with when I accept a book, what are we agreeing on here with the author?
Mm,
Because some authors will sometimes just write like, "Hey, I would love to send you my book," and I try to be careful to say like, "Okay, I can accept the book, but I make no promises that I'll ever read it. If you're looking for a review, then you should probably save the money and send it to someone else." And I think, and I hope a lot of authors often appreciate it, me just saying,
yeah.
I probably will never read it. And I often found a lot of authors then wouldn't send me their books, which again is absolutely fine. Like I told them, I'm not going to be able to give anything in return. So I don't think I receive as many books that I don't intend to read anymore,
Hmm.
which is good. Sometimes authors still are like, I want to send it anyway. I don't care if you read it, you read it, but let me just send it to you. And in those cases, I'm happy to accept it. But I just know from other content creators that just that stress of you having accepted a book and then you accept another and then another, and then suddenly you have 10 books that you have promised to read, and like you're probably excited for it, but it just adds stress to the fact that you have to read it. And
Yeah.
when it comes to self-publishing, and I love the self-publishing community, I just know often that if an author sends me their book, they're potentially hoping that a review from me might like kickstart something, and that adds
Right.
another pressure where I don't want to let anyone down. So very often now I don't even respond to those emails because I get so many, or I just tell them that probably save your money, find another content creator that is smaller but that will actually give you a proper review than me,
Hmm.
where the book will just disappear into my shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. So one, how do you decide what on the massive TBR comes next? And then two, have you ever, you get so many books. I've seen a little bit of like discussion on Twitter of like arcs that are being resold. What do you do with so many of the books that you get, and what is your kind of position on reviewers reselling arcs?
Yeah, I think so. What do I do with my books? First and foremost, a lot of them I donate to charity shops, or if I have some books that are worth something like £20 or whatever, I often like post them to eBay, which is fine. I mean, obviously selling arcs can be problematic. I think obviously also because it says do not sell it. I don't personally have a big issue if I know someone else does it, but it's just unfortunate because those books aren't meant to be sold, you know? Um, Maybe also something, again, I haven't really thought much about this if I'm being absolutely honest, but I'm also thinking like if an arc is 5 years old, it's, I don't mind if someone sells a 5-year-old arc, you know?
Sure.
Because the demand probably isn't there anymore. Because I remember when I started receiving arcs, I would occasionally look online what people say, and some people said like they would just throw them in the bin, and
Yeah.
I was like, I can't throw a book away. Then I would rather at least donate it. But yeah, I don't know. But a lot of the books, I try to clean out my shelves a couple of times a year at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about you? How do you? I don't know if you own many physical books, but is that something that you unhaul?
I I moved not that long ago, and my wife was like, "Are you really gonna read like this book that you've had?" And I'm like, "All right, fine." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like I agree with you that like probably the worst outcome is just throwing a book away. I
Mm,
would totally makes sense to me that if an author is giving an arc, like they're sort of relinquishing control. But I think selling on eBay is probably suboptimal. And one of the
yeah.
things that I saw in this
Absolutely.
Twitter discussion was like, instead, if you're not gonna keep the arc, that's fine, but
Yeah.
why don't you
Yeah.
do a giveaway of it? And I
Yeah.
think that's fantastic. And I like to imagine like
Yeah.
not
And
only could you do like a giveaway one.
you run a significant risk if you decide to sell an art, because if people figure out, then your reputation will be damaged, and the publisher might stop sending you stuff.
Right.
So I'll definitely
Right.
encourage people to be careful if they decide to go down that path, because that's a bit of a risky path to go down.
There's some reviewer that's like, so and so eats books, and like I've heard from indie authors that they'll send him a physical arc at his request. All he wants is like physical. And rarely is there a review, but often you'll see that arc for sale later. It's like,
Really?
oh, yeah, yeah. But watch
Wow.
out for the eats books guy. I feel like the was right there. We should have known. We should have.
Yeah, yeah. I especially when it comes to self-publishing authors, I think that's really sad. Like
Yeah,
publishing houses, again, I don't think it's right, but they're like so much bigger. But like the little guy, why would you
yeah,
ask someone to spend money on sending stuff and then you just sell it?
right,
If
right.
yeah,
Um, all right, just a couple more questions. Appreciate you spending so much time with me. This
yeah,
has
of
been
course,
fun.
I'm really enjoying this conversation, man.
Good, good. Um, so you've been doing this for a little while. You've got a little bit of, you've got a community that you've got people sending you books. What has been your favorite experience that has come from all of this that like, man, if I hadn't started like BookTube or even the Instagram, that definitely wouldn't happen. And that was so cool,
That's a lovely question. I would love to hear you as well answer this question afterwards, because I think a lot of people have different things. I would probably highlight two different things. I think going to conventions is one of the coolest things ever.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to a couple of like fantasy conventions, and it's just like authors are so approachable. You don't live in the UK, do you? You live in the
No,
States.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So in the United Kingdom, we have a convention called Fantasy Con, which is it's a great con, but it's very, very small. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
many people are there, like 300 or 400. It's tiny compared to a lot of the bigger conventions out there. And what is so cool is like in the evening, people just go to the pub, like authors will just join. Um, this year in September, like I ended up having a pint with Ryan Cahill and Mark Lawrence at one point, and I'm like, what is life? Like, what is happening right now? It's like it feels so crazy, really. And also like at Golden's Fest this year, I had a beer with like Joe Abercrombie for a short while, but I still like was drinking a beer with him and chatting with him. So I would definitely say those experiences are some of the highlights. Probably the most memorable thing I've ever experienced is that I went to a random charity shop very close to where I live, and one of the guy that volunteers there was like, "Your Library of a Viking," and that was the only time I've ever like outside a book setting experienced that someone would just recognize me in public. And yeah, I was just blown away, because even though I have 40,000 subscribers, it's still a low
Yeah,
number when you think about how big the public is.
yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
But what about you? Have you had any great experiences?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give you two answers. And well, I'm going to Dragon Con later this year. My wife's
Oh,
birthday
so
gift to me
cool.
was a ticket for Dragon Con, so I hope to have a similar experience to yours of hanging out with some folks. That'll be fun.
That's cool. Yeah.
So the first one in October or November last year, my show had been relatively new, the interview show. I'd only like the very first episode was posted like the end of June last year. So it was only like a few months old. But I got an email from Adrian M. Gibson. So I had already been like listening to SFF Addicts podcast, and
Yeah.
enjoying his podcast. But he sent me an email and he's like, "Hey, my debut book, Mushroom Blues, is going to come out in the future, and I'd like to be on your show." And I was like, "You want to be on my show?" Right?
That's
That
so
was,
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. I loved it. So and then he and I started like talking and chit chatting, and that was great. And then he started posting too with this like hashtag of hashtag the break-ins. And I said, Adrian, what is this break-ins thing? Is it just like a group of some authors that are kind of banded together? And he's like, that's exactly what it is. You have a
Mm.
book coming out sometime, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you want in? I was like,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that little break-ins group, it's of 15 people, and there's some people from Canada, Andrew Watson over in the UK, there,
Mm.
Adrian's in Ecuador, a few Americans, and a bunch of Australians.
Cool.
And yeah, we're just all kind of helping each other out. The other that's kind of one continuous thing that was just
Yeah.
amazing and has been wonderful. The other thing was crazy. So there's this feels, do you feel weird? I mean, we'll get back to my story, but that person was like, "Oh, it's you, Library of the Bike." Do you feel weird saying like you have a fan? Because that thing, just like the word "I have a fan" just feels very foreign to me. But like that's the word to describe this sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I genuinely, I still find it so strange. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, there's probably a lot of fans of Library of a Viking out there, but that just sounds ridiculous in my mind. But another
Yeah,
thing, and I'm like, obviously, I love my patrons, but that also just blows my mind that
yeah,
anyone is willing to help me out in that way. Like
yeah,
they enjoy my content, they know what I spend the money for. and people just, giving me money. Like, I do provide some benefits, but that just
Yeah.
also blows my mind. I can't really fathom it, but I'm very, very grateful, and it's really
Right.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a surreal experience. So there's this guy named Amy Cormack who's Australian, and
Mm,
he's been a fan for a little bit.
nice.
He's kind of interacted, and he says he likes the interviews, he likes the show, it's fantastic. Um, he asked me a while ago. He's like, "Hey, are you ever gonna like make the interviews into a podcast? Because I'd love to be able to consume them that way." And
Yeah.
I said, I've thought about it. Haven't kind of taken the leap, that sort of thing. Do you think it's something I should do? And he's like, "Heck yeah, that'd be awesome." I'm like, "Okay,
Mm.
thanks, appreciate that." Fast forward like a few weeks later, he sends me a DM on Instagram. He's like, "Hey, I banged this short story out trying to convince you to turn it into a podcast." And so, like, in this
Wow.
short story, it's this dystopian future, and this character is trying to, make their way through fighting monsters and whatever. But their solace in between all of the hell is listening to the Nicholas W. Fuller show.
Wow.
Right? I'm like,
Cool.
not only do I have a fan, but like I have fan art. Like, is this fan
Mm,
art for me? Like that felt
that's so cool.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
am
very cool. It's very
in
neat.
love with that short story. It makes my day every time I think about it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a good story.
Yeah. So, all right. I want to ask. I think our final question is going to be, what's your most like kind of prized book in your collection? But before that, another person in the chat asked kind of just broadly like booktube tips. So I want you to address that one first.
Oh, Kaiten. Oh, where to start? Okay, what I will say then, I'll keep this brief. Um, watch a bunch of videos on how to do YouTube, and do not. I would recommend try not to get overwhelmed. So maybe do one video a day.
Mm,
But the best advice I've been given, and there's a lot of great advice I've been given, but the best one is from Mr. Beast, and
mm,
that is that his whole thing is to try to get to 100 uploads as quick as possible because you learn so
mm,
much. But he kind of summarizes this that if you can learn one skill from uploading video 1 to 2 and another skill from video 2 to 3, just one skill, then when you reach video 100, your quality, like your video content, your ability to create videos, that's what I'm trying to say,
yeah.
is going to be like really advanced. So I've been really trying to do that. I wouldn't say I do that now for every single video, but when you start, try to learn how can I learn how to write a better title. That's one skill. When you're editing, like learn a new shortcut or learn how to add an effect where a picture goes like this. Just one minor thing every single time.
Yeah.
And when you reach video 100, then you'll be pretty good, like way better than where you were. So that's a really good way to make it a bit easier because a lot of people get so overwhelmed with there's so much complexity, there's so many things to learn. But don't think about that. Just upload and try to learn one new skill every single time, and you'll be surprised how good your 100 video will be.
I love that. Is there any particular like? There's a bunch of channels that exist that like the whole point of the channel is to teach how to be successful at YouTube. There's one that I kind of like called a film booth. Are there any
Yes.
channels like that you really like?
Yeah, there used to be a channel called Channel Makers. It still exists, but the host isn't there anymore. There's a different host. I'm not watching them anymore.
Hmm,
Think Media has a lot of great stuff.
hmm,
But yeah, I would just try to watch a lot of the bigger things. And
mhm.
I know like everyone listens to Mr. Beast, but he has some incredible podcasts on
Yeah.
YouTube. And it's really, really inspiring to hear how he approaches YouTube, really. Because yeah, there's so many things really, but yeah, try to learn one skill from each upload, and or like change your setup a tiny bit. Just do one minor improvement every
Yeah.
single time.
Right. Prove your lighting. That sort of. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and even like you, I'm sure you also from when you started till now, you must have learned a bunch of things, which has made your content better.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, just how to use StreamYard, for example.
Yeah,
I remember
exactly. Yeah,
the first like couple live streams I try to use different software and it functions, but it's not nearly as like professional as
StreamYard is
StreamYard
amazing.
for
I love
yeah.
StreamYard. It's just
Yeah.
so expensive if you want the pro version. That's my only nitpick. But
Yeah.
the free version is great as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm paying for StreamYard and I pay for Riverside, which I was using before, and I'm not using it as much. And like, not to mention, my mother last year for my birthday got me a not cheap camera.
Nice. It's a very good quality, your camera.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad. It should be.
Yeah.
uh, all right. So, last one, my friend. What is your favorite or like most prized book in your collection, or maybe that's separate from most expensive? And if it is, I'd love to see like what's the most valuable one.
Oh, there's little doubt. I just have to. Someone sent me this last year, and so I didn't buy this because I'm not that rich. But this is the numbered edition of The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie by Curious Kings. So there's only
Wow.
150 copies of these. And I'm not even going to say how expensive these were when they went out. And they sold out in like a millisecond. But yeah, it has a nice slipcase and
Ooh.
like proper leather bound, full of illustrations, signed and numbered by the author and the illustrator.
Wow.
Has like tip-ins. And yeah, this book is just it's
Gorgeous. Yeah.
insane. When I opened it, I do have like a reaction video somewhere on my channel where I opened it the first time because the guy that sent me this and he wants to remain anonymous, so he isn't even looking for any marketing. But he was like, just record your reaction, and yeah, that just blew my mind. So that's definitely the most expensive book. I'm sure I have some. Yeah, I mean, if you asked me before, I would probably have found something. But one thing I really like are these hardbacks. So you've probably seen
Mhm.
these. But Ryan Cahill has done a numbered edition, which are only limited to 50. And I have one of them. So,
Nice.
and I have all of them in collection. So, yeah. What do you have
Nice.
any nice books?
You know.
Or are you trying to save your money? Because as soon as you start, it's so if you don't have any, consider that a blessing because
No. I've
it's a
got.
slippery road.
Hang on. Hang on.
I'll put this book back. Oh, I have another one. I'll find it. I think when you're back. Now this has just become a showcase nice books stream. Well, while people are waiting, I'm very happy to show my John Gwynne arc of Shadow of the Gods. That's probably, oh, there we go. This is probably one of my favorites as well. You can't even hear
Ooh.
me. You can't even hear
I'm
me.
sorry. I could not, but now I
That's
can.
fine.
I apologize.
This arc of Shadow of the Gods is
That
probably
is
also
nice.
one of my favorites. I got this one also quite early on in my booktube journey, so I was just so stoked. Loved it.
Right? I've had a couple people like send me stuff, and I'm always just like, wow, thanks. That's a great feeling. All right. I've got a couple different, different like answers, and I like. It's kind of fun that you're like, turning all my questions back on me. Like, I don't get that all the time, and I'm a little
No, you
like,
don't.
oh man, I gotta.
I thought it
All
was going to
right.
be a conversation, not an interview.
Well, this is. I'm happy about it. I'm happy. All right. So this is one of I think this is the prettiest book I own. Have you seen this Threadlight Omnibus that he did the Kickstarter
Oh,
for?
it's
Ooh,
incredible.
right?
Shall
Let
we
me do.
both hold it up?
Yeah. Hang on just a second. Sorry. Let me do that.
Oh,
There we
look at
go.
that.
Now we have a little bit more room. Yep.
Snub. Yeah, this is
Ba-ba.
incredible.
Right? Like
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I think like I as soon as the Kickstarter was live, I was like, okay, we're doing this just because it's so gorgeous. This is
I
like
was, yeah. I mean, you definitely made a good choice there because this is,
yeah.
it's. I'm not saying it's cheap, but when you
No.
compare it to what other fine presses and stuff are charging
Right.
for, yeah, other books, and this is a relatively good value. 3 books as well,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's really incredible.
To me, this like sets the standard for like what a Kickstarter special edition could be. Like this
Mm,
indie special edition for Kickstarter. This is like, I don't think you can do a lot better than
I
this. All
think
right,
yeah,
you know,
definitely. Gunmetal Gods will probably be incredible as well,
that one's true. There, yeah,
which I haven't backed or anything, but it looks like it's gonna be incredible.
yeah. I mean, yeah, the sprayed edges. This is everything. This is everything.
It is, yeah.
So that's one. Second one, as I was grabbing books, I was like, you know what, this one's pretty special and kind of priced. So this is an indie author named Erica Everin, and this book is Echoes of Destiny. And this one is signed to me, and it
Oh,
says,
that's nice.
Nicholas, thanks for all your helpful feedback. So like this one I
Very
had beta
nice.
read a year ago. And that was like
Mhm.
the first time I had beta read for anyone that I like. I have an in-person writing group and we've been meeting for a while, but like Erica lives in Canada and I barely knew her when I like saw her post to beta read and I was like, okay, sure. And yeah, I didn't pull punches, but she was very grateful and I thought that was so cool, you know?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, personalized books are they're something else, aren't they? They hit you right in the feels.
Yes, yes. And then one more, which is definitely my most prized. So, too many years ago, I can't count, and I'm old. But many, many, many years ago, I wrote and self-published, and it's no longer available. But my first book,
Oh,
called
nice.
with this
That's
terrible.
proper rare then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you the only copies of them are like three friends, and then up in my attic. You know.
Nice. And is it signed?
This one's not. I have to sign this for myself. Like,
You should definitely sign it. I've
Right,
heard
but
I've heard Nicholas Fuller is a very rare signature.
it's a very rare signature. It is, yeah. So that one's pretty prized because it's now kind of my it's no longer out in the world, but now it's just for me, and that's pretty cool. And I can at least say that like years ago I wrote like it's a full proper book. Still working on the next book in my writing career, but I've done the thing, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely keep hold on that and don't lose
right.
it.
No. I've got plus I've got a few of them. So like
Mm,
because
yeah,
when I unpublished it, I was like, I want to make sure that I buy a few in case like I want to give one to another friend or that sort of thing because I don't really know if how hard it would be to try to get a copy later, you know.
no, yeah,
So yeah, well you
yeah,
got it's a pretty cool collection. I like some of your top ones there. Very nice, very nice.
yeah. I mean, I've definitely like I've purchased some of these, but I will just admit I've been quite blessed with stuff that people have sent me and people I've come in contact with that are sending me stuff. So I don't want to act like I'm super rich or anything, because I wouldn't say I'm like a millionaire or anything.
You're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
same. You know, but yeah,
Well,
then
like
we get
my wife, she's like she one thing that she is happy with when it comes to my YouTube is that like quite early on I was able to generate a bit of money, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Well, you created a mini side hustle, and you just use that to buy books. I'm okay with that. Like, it doesn't really go out of our like saving
Yeah,
costs or anything."
yeah. You're like, all right.
Yeah, well, I try not to spend all of it, obviously, but
Sure.
yeah, but yeah,
Good
4 years
stuff.
I think of collecting.
Did you like 4 years? Well, but I'm sure like at least some of the. Well, yeah. How many of those books have come in just the last 4 years? How the books that are like behind you right now? Like,
Mm.
all of them
Yeah,
come in the last 4 years?
yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I generally try not to tell people which books I receive for free because I don't want to brag or anything. But
Sure,
yeah, a lot of the books behind me, not the Dragon Steel though, those I've actually purchased, but a lot of the other books I received, which I'm very grateful for. But
that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. But ultimately, like the story is the most important thing, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. No one gets excited for like a real special edition of a book they don't like.
That's
You
so
know?
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
thing. Like the other day, Folio Society had like a 75% discount on a like 3 book collection. I was like, these books are beautiful, but I've never read them. So I was like, well, even if they're so cheap now compared to what I used to,
Yeah,
like I'm not gonna spend money on it because what's the point, you know?
yeah. I hear you. Well, but yeah, instead you just get to a bunch of books you like behind you, which is pretty fantastic. And you get to
Yeah.
finally, again, like now you have plenty of people to talk to about Stephen King,
Yeah,
right?
and I need to make some Stephen King videos. I counted the other day. Have you read any Stephen King before?
Like my cousin is one of my go-tos for like book recs because he just consumes audiobooks at an absurd pace. And he was really trying to get me into Dark Tower.
Oh
But
yeah.
I like one, I don't like horror because I'm a sissy. And two, like I kind of like I don't generally like more surreal stuff. I
Yeah.
want something a little bit more concrete.
Grounded.
Like
Yeah.
yes. So anyway, I tried to give Dark Tower a shot and it like no hate, but it's just not for me, you know?
No, I think the the Gunslinger especially is a very very hard book to recommend, and that's one of my favorite series of all time. Um, yeah, it's one of the few books I can genuinely say you will come to appreciate it when you finish the series. But I'm not going to ask you to push through because I don't think it's going to be for you. But
Right.
genuinely, the first book, it when you finish the series, you're like, wow, that just blew my mind. But I mean, people always talk about Stephen King as this horror author, which he is, but genuinely, he's more of a drama author. Like if you look at how many books he's written,
Hmm.
most of his work isn't horror, and he has some good stuff out there that is more drama. But yeah, he isn't for everyone, so no worries.
There are some that like what is it? The Salem's Lot. That's on my TBR, you know?
Okay.
There's
I mean,
like I
that's
want to
definitely horror. I haven't
Yeah,
read
but
this lot. It's one of the few popular ones I haven't read, but
yeah.
I
Even
just
though
finished. We read Needful Things for a book club, which is a
yeah.
chunker, but that book was honestly incredible. But yeah, if you're gonna read any Stephen King, I would recommend The Green Mile.
Oh yeah, yeah, right, yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, the
All
book
right.
is incredible as well.
I
Really,
mean,
it's so good.
a personal recommendation from Library of a Viking. How could I say go? I gotta go and add it to the top of my TBR now.
No, I don't know. I'm not sure if that ties, but I mean, surely do you have any recommendations for me?
So you said that you haven't done a lot of sci-fi, right?
No, I've done like I read the first three Red Rising books before you
Okay.
recommend them, but yeah, quite high on my TBR. It's either to continue that series or
Uh-huh.
get to Empire of Silence.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
That was another one that popped in my head was and I haven't read that one yet, but I mean
mm,
everyone's talking about Rockio right now, right?
yeah, everyone, and we're reading for the book club Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, which I
Okay.
believe is a sci-fi dystopian novel.
Cool.
I literally just started yesterday, read 20 pages. But yeah,
Nice.
I mean, do you have any sci-fi recs?
Have you heard of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers?
I have heard about it, but I haven't read it yet. It's
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's like cozy sci-fi. Um,
yeah,
I feel like
great.
the publishers, marketers did the book a little bit of a disservice because if you read like kind of the back blurb, it makes it seem like there's one particular character that is like the main character. And if you
Mm,
go into it thinking that, as Bookborn did, then you might get disappointed, right?
yeah.
It is much more about an ensemble, and you're hearing a story about a whole ensemble. Um,
Mm,
but so there's one character that you sort of like start out with her story, but then as the story goes on, it shifts, and you're hearing more about the rest of this group of folks. But Becky Chambers does really excellent character work. All of the characters are very distinct and fully developed and interesting. They come, even though they're all like kind of working together, they have their own like values and personalities, and some of them are aliens, so like their sort of personalities and values and are wildly different from others,
yeah.
um but I mean ultimately it's still a story that's very like human, just touching
Mm,
on how we all deal with sort of life, right? Like all
great.
the challenges
Oh,
of
brilliant.
yeah, it's really good. There's still tension and like of course a plot, things are going somewhere, but it's not save the universe stakes. So in that way it's more like cozy
No,
sci-fi. They're just
yeah,
doing their thing and trying to make their way and deal with all the things that come up along the way.
Hmm,
I definitely recommend it. I think it's a good one. I mean, you can.
that's good. It
There's
sounds
a
like a good palate cleanser.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah, yeah,
definitely in that category.
yeah. Like, I mean, a small way. What is called a small way to Angry Planet? Is that how the title?
The long way to a small angry planet. Yeah,
Okay, the
Becky
long way.
Chambers.
There you go.
Yep.
Um, these long titles, man.
I know. I know. I know.
Yeah, it's one of the actually first books I heard about when I started watching BookTube. I
Oh,
think it
really?
was Elliot Brooks, like 3, 4
Mm,
years ago. That was like, this is a great novel, and yeah, it's been there in the back of my head ever since. But I just never gotten around to reading it.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
good that you actually reminded me it exists.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
I
it's
got to
good.
shout out, like, Bo's recommended my boy JCM Burns. So Wistful
Mm.
Ascending. That's like,
Nice, colorful covers. At least I've seen the covers floating around on Twitter.
right, right. That's more of a like superhero science fiction, which is kind of fun,
Oh, interesting. Haven't
right?
read much superhero fiction. I have a
There
bit
you
of
go.
a hot take because I love fantasy, but I'm not a huge fan of superheroes.
Uh huh.
But
Uh huh.
maybe in literature, I'll enjoy them more.
You can always do a like a Kindle preview, right?
That's
see
the
see how
thing,
you
yeah.
feel about it. Yeah. How do
Yeah.
you know I don't want to talk forever, Johan. I don't want to take all your
That's all
time.
right. Take your time, man. I'm really enjoying it.
Nice, thank you. All right. Well, so like when there's a few different books and you're like, well, I wonder about Wistful Ascending. I wonder if that one's for me, and
Mm.
maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Like, how do you kind of make a decision? Do you read chapter one and then make a decision, or what do you do?
That's a good question. I find this question, I've received it before in the past, a bit challenging to answer
Mm-hmm.
because it's a bit like, so, okay, now we're getting a bit into philosophy. But the question is, when you go to an ice cream van, if you don't know which flavor you want, and then the man offers you vanilla or strawberry, and then suddenly you just like, oh, I'm craving strawberry right now. The question is, do you have a free will in that choice or not? And I feel sometimes it's similar to when it comes to books that like I have several options in front of me, and occasionally I'm just like, I'm in the mood for this book, even though I haven't read it, and I'm not really sure exactly where it comes from. If I had like a free will say in it, but what I will say is that things that have a big impact is that I try to complete series.
Yeah,
So if I have too many series ongoing that are completed, so obviously I do read debut novels, but if I know the trilogy is completed, I genuinely try and prioritize those books a bit. So if I have like 5 trilogies going and I read the first or second book in 5 different trilogies, I genuinely, it's more likely I'll pick one of the books in one of those series just to finish something off.
sure.
Another is reputation. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
king, but if people talk about a book, it's more likely that I'll pick it up. And there's this
Mm-hmm.
theory in marketing that to get someone to buy a product, you have to expose them to the product 10 times.
Oh, 10. Okay. I was like,
Okay,
I've heard the same thing, like 7, but like
7, yeah. I mean, there's probably
definitely
different,
multiple. Right,
yeah,
right,
there's
right,
probably,
right, right.
depending on who you ask. But I found that has a big impact. A lot of the self-published books I read is because I've seen it on Twitter, then I see it on a random Instagram story, and then after a week, you see some booktuber having a review for it, and before you know it, you suddenly have like you kind of just want to read it, and you don't really know where and when that longing came from. So that also has an impact. But I do read every year some books that have almost no reviews. I read 2 this year. So I saw Caden Love. He joined the chat.
Yeah.
I read his book this year, which I quite enjoyed.
Oh,
And
nice.
then
I
I
think
read,
you just made his day, by the way.
oh, that's good. Well, and then I read the guy that writes, what is it's a green cover. I don't know. I feel so bad. I forgot the name. It's a brand new self-published novel. Um, Michael, whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He has come out with a brand new book, and when he had 0 reviews, he just contacted me randomly on Twitter, and he was like, "I have this arc. You want to read it?" And I had no idea why, because I usually don't read books with no reviews. But I was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." It was short, so I read that book. So again, similar to the ice cream and vanilla. I don't know
Yeah.
why I picked up that book. I receive requests every day, but
Yeah.
yeah. And what about you? Do you have like a structured TBR?
No, no,
No.
not even no. And like part of it too is I don't, and this going back to kind of talking about like booktube and talking about some of my plans about talking about like craft and because I don't want to do a lot of reviews, particularly as someone that likes to do writing too. We need reviewers. And I'm glad that you do it and other folks do it, and it's an important thing. But I don't want to be like saying anything negative whatsoever about someone else that I know has put their heart and soul into a book, like similar to like what I've done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so reviews are kind of out for me generally. I have gotten some requests, and the one was pretty cool recently. A guy was like, "Hey, I've got a debut coming out. Can I give it to you?" I said, "Sure, if you want, but I don't really do a lot of reviews, so I'm not, He said, "No problem. How about you read the first chapter on your channel?" And I was like, "Okay, all right, I'll do that." I haven't done that before, so that was kind of fun. But otherwise, it's just a little bit what I'm vibing with, a little what I've seen and heard. So the two things I'm reading right now are Sister Samurai from Tatiana Obi, which is great. She's a really good writer. And then the other thing I'm having fun with is the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I suspect you've heard of. Yeah. I just get started. I devoured the first book over a weekend a little while ago, and just started the second book recently. Very I like to read on the Kindle, but I'm also doing audiobook, and especially I love that you can get you can bundle in the audiobook for like $7.50 so often with these indie books,
Yeah.
So then I'll be reading like before bed, but then I'll wake up and be making breakfast and I'll listen to the audiobook, and the audiobook for that is super fun. Have you read those yet, the Dungeon Crawler Carl books?
No, I haven't, and I have no plans to read them.
That's fair. I was definitely hesitant because I don't like the idea of lit RPG, but I don't want all the stats in there. You know what I mean? But because of the premise of this, the way it's sort of this post-apocalypse that and the game is thrust upon the characters from outside forces, then I was like, okay, I kind of had similar to Guardians of the Galaxy when those movies were coming out. The previews, and I saw Rocket Raccoon, and I was like, a friggin' raccoon? What are we doing? This doesn't work for me. But then I saw a preview, and they didn't take themselves seriously, and I was like, all right, maybe. And then I really enjoyed the movie. So
yeah, those are great. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the more I've read, and there's nothing wrong with Dungeon Crawler cards and stuff but I generally figure out that books that have a lot of humor in them, I don't generally end up loving.
Yeah.
So like Discworld, Pratchett is a genius, but I don't really enjoy his books. And Great Codes, Black Tongue Thief, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I know makes people angry. I mean, I appreciate that they're all well written, but they just don't do anything for me. When everything is just a massive joke. I know a lot of people love those kinds of books, and I'm very, very happy for them. But they're just not my jam. So it's only when the primary focus is, this absurdism or humor.
Yeah.
So, but nothing wrong with them. But from everything I've heard about Dungeon Crawler Car, it sounds like the ideal book or the perfect book I wouldn't enjoy. It has almost all the attributes of a book I probably wouldn't enjoy. So I'm really a bit sad I'm missing out on the love, because people seem to eat them up.
Yeah. No, I totally fair.
Maybe one day. Never say never.
I mean, listen, it's okay.
Maybe I'll love it. I'm open for it.
But it's okay if you don't. It's okay. And also today I learned that I won't be sending you my books when they're out. Any of the stuff I'm working, because I do try to I weave in some humor. I've gotten some good. It's tough though, and to be funny with just text.
Yeah.
Because you don't get tone, you don't get timing, none of that you really have full control of. No. Yeah,
that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I enjoy humor in my novels. It's just where Discworld, which is supposed to be just absurdism and humor, and Hitchhiker's Guide, where every other sentence is a joke. I get what the author is doing, but I just don't find it that entertaining. It's a bit. I need a novel to be a bit more serious. I enjoy Legends of Latte, cozy fantasy.
Sure.
Really enjoyed that stuff, but again, it feels just it's a bit more grounded, a bit more serious, even though it's cozy.
No, I get, yeah, yeah. It's sort of it. I remember talking with Travis, and he kind of set out to write that one sort of tongue in cheek, and then he said as he was going through the process of writing it, became more earnest, and it does.
Mm,
It feels so earnest because like for him, it was a story too about like Viv is there's parallels between Viv and himself because he was sort of changing from being a game developer to being a professional audiobook narrator, and Viv's changing from being this adventurer to like opening her own cafe, and so that, yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying of the silly wackiness is just not always for you. You got to have a little bit of earnestness, and that's totally fair. That's
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you read any Joe Abercrombie, but I mean, if people watch my stuff, they know I've said this so many times before, so I do
yeah,
apologize. But what I love about Joe Abercrombie is that
uh-huh.
it's first and foremost a very grim novel. But Joe Abercrombie, he sprinkles some incredible humor into this awful setting. And
Nice,
I find it hilarious because you
yeah,
have like this torturer that will make like these horrible, grim jokes. And I really enjoy it. But
yeah,
something about that. This is a character-driven, grimdark novel, first and foremost, that has a bit of humor.
yeah.
That makes a difference. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, no, yeah, I think I get what you're saying. I haven't read Abercrombie yet. Like he's definitely on the TBR. But I'll tell you the his new work, like the premise of that sounds like that might be my entry point for
Mm,
Abercrombie.
yeah.
I love
Yeah, and
the
you might be
concept of
reading
it.
his best work yet, because that'll be his, what will that be? Like his 14th novel at that
Right.
point. So he should have honed his craft. His most recent trilogy, Age of Madness,
Yeah.
is his best work to date. So I'm not sure if he's going to be able to top that, but hopefully he's able to take it to a whole new level. Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. Yeah. Hey, what are you excited for that new concept, new work also, or are you
Yeah,
like a little
I'm
skeptical?
no, I'm very, very, very hyped.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got like a sample chapter when I went to
Oh,
Golan's
nice.
Fest, the
Yeah.
publisher.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's somewhere between my, well, you can see there's my hand. You can
Wait,
see the
hang on.
start of my Abercrombie. Somewhere in between there, I like shoved a
Uh-huh.
sample of the chapter.
That's cool.
So I'm
That's cool.
very hyped. I haven't read it yet. The only reason why I didn't read the sample is because I just knew that as soon as I started reading, I wouldn't want to stop reading. So I'll just wait until I actually have the full book here. Like
Yeah.
giving me 30 pages is not enough.
No, don't do that to me. That's funny.
No, but he's also just really great. I've met him 2 or 3 times now, and he's genuinely just so down to earth, makes jokes with you and stuff. So I also think he seems to be a very nice person as well, which I'm a sucker for.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Give me a good person for sure. I love
Yeah,
a Sanderson set of Abercrombie that is like much nicer than his characters.
mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He is much nicer than his characters. His characters are horrible.
yeah, right.
That's another thing, actually. Speaking of books I pick up, that also genuinely has a big impact if I see an author like interacting in a community,
Mm,
just being a voice for good. Again, it's
hmm,
not the main factor, but that can also have an impact.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's loads of different factors, I suppose.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we always want to support a non-asshole, right?
Yeah, that's true. True.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's very, very true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
yeah, love all the things that you've been doing for the community in your time. You definitely been a force, man, out there again, like 40,000 fans and everything, and everyone has good things to say about you. So,
Well, I'm not sure
yeah,
if everyone anymore after my takes with epic fantasy. But I feel so honored and blessed really for how everything has grown. And yeah, I'm definitely hoping I'll be able to stick around for many years to come for sure. Yeah, and hopefully also you'll stick around because a lot of booktubers that started booktubing when I started have stopped posting. So
really.
it feels like the line is like 2 or 3 years and then people just quit.
Hmm,
So we'll
that's
see.
interesting. So you've gotten through that, especially if you consider the time on Instagram too, right? You're
Mm,
longer than
yeah,
2 years at least, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I,
and no,
I think any human, even though they often create their channel with the intention of just having a small community, if you end up spending, 5 hours a week, or a lot of people will spend way more than 5 hours a week on your channel,
yeah,
and you get, one comment, 80 views on a consistent basis,
Sure.
I mean, even though you didn't create the channel with intention of being famous, that will have an impact on your mental health over time. And you just have to
Yeah.
just ask yourself the question, like, why am I doing this if no one watches? And so I totally get it. And booktube is a tough gig because in real life, we don't know many people that read. And in real life, we know even fewer people that read fantasy. And then the pie of fantasy readers that are actually interested in watching booktube is even smaller. And then from that tiny pie, you have to compete against other content creators for their
Yeah.
intentions. So and you can become rich like Daniel Green. He is well off, but for 99 point something percent of booktube creators, they never receive any monetary gain or very, very little. So there has to be something else that drives you than
Right.
just money and growth. But I think most people can probably grow a channel if they just try to teach themselves how does YouTube work, what are
Right.
people interested in watching and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I think all good points. You know, it's been nice though. Like, you know, sometimes you do think you're talking to the void, right?
Yeah.
But then every once in a while you get like someone writes a crazy short story about you as you know, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I'm having an impact. I also on Twitter, I made like a very kind of offhanded tweet because I wanted to cast something out into the void where I said it was a rough day and
Yeah.
whatever. But the feedback I got from the book community was so warm and like lovely. You know, I feel like if you can't kind of keep going from that, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. The community is wonderful, but again, I do also understand when people quit
sure.
because yeah, it's very time consuming. So
Yeah, everyone, we need to get Johan his Patreon going so that he can keep doing this when he's got his family. That's what
yeah,
you know.
I mean, it's not the end of the world, really. There's other things in life that are obviously more important. But yeah, I mean, I do have Patreon, but I don't know. I've never really figured out how to promote it really well. Like, there's so many creators on this platform that are just amazing at growing a Patreon, and I'm really happy with where my Patreon is at. But there's many creators that have way fewer subscribers that have, 5 or 10 times as big patrons than I do. So
Yeah,
maybe this year I'll try to figure it out. We'll see. But I'm
there we
happy
go.
with where I am at the moment.
All right, Johan, I'm gonna wrap things up. I gotta see what my son is up to and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But this has been an absolute delight, man. I like it. Absolutely. Like, what a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate it, man. This has been...
Thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate it. Yeah, definitely. And all the
I
best.
feel like
I hope everything with writing and booktube and whatever. You say you had so many projects in the background. I hope at least you're able to complete one project this year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hope all the best for you. I think this was kind of a no-brainer, but still, where can people find and follow you online?
Primarily YouTube. I do also have Twitter and Instagram, but primarily YouTube.
And of course, it's Library of a Viking on YouTube. And if you're not already following Johan, get on that. What are you doing? Like, and go on his Patreon. Come on.
And if you're not following Nicholas, then also, what are you doing?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks you, Richard. This was fun. It was for us too.
Thanks, Richard.
Appreciate all of you out there in the chat, everyone watching. Thanks very much. And for everyone that's been here, everyone that watches this, whether it's today or another time, if no one's told you today, you're an absolute legend.